Today I'm going to be reviewing and range testing each one of these great realistic CB radio walkie-talkies. But before we get started, let's have an appropriate CB radio introduction to each of them. This will be a close range test with a great new radio, the President Randy II FCC.
First up, we have the realistic TRC-226 from the early 1990s. Next, from the 1980s, we have the realistic TRC-216. Now, from the 1970s, here is the realistic TRC-99C. Again, from the 1970s, this is the realistic TRC-100B. And finally, from the early 1970s, it's the TRC-101.
Let's take a look at the TRC-226 and some of the features on it. Came with two antennas, or actually I believe it came with one originally, and I bought this one as an extra, but it came with the rubber duck, and I bought the center loaded telescopic later. Also, it came with these two battery packs. This is not rechargeable. These are for rechargeables. This one holds 8 AA batteries, and this one holds 10 AA batteries. So let's look inside this battery pack. So you can see, took a penny to open it up. There you have your batteries. Close it back up, and it slides into position on the radio, like so. Now let's look at some of the buttons on the side. We have a power button. This will switch it from low power to high power. Has a backlight button here, and then there's your push to talk, and here is the switch to release the battery pack. So you pull that back and it'll pop right out. On the other side, it has a power connector for your wall socket power. You need one of these, and it just plugs in like so, and then you could operate it in your house off your socket power. Now, also on the rechargeable case, it does have a socket for recharging the case while it's in the radio, or when it's outside the radio. You can use the socket power I just showed you, or if you're in the car, you can use this in your 12-volt adapter, and it just plugs in. And that way you can recharge your batteries as you're driving. Also, something extra I bought after I got the radio was the external mic, and I actually forgot to show you that, where the jacks are. So right here is your external mic jack. Just pull the rubber up, and the mic goes in just like that. So it has a clip on the back. So let's go ahead and put the rubber ducky on and turn it on. Now the thing is, with the mic jack in, it's a little bit difficult to operate the knobs. So right now we're on channel 19. Again, switching the power from low power to high power, and when you switch to low power, it does indicate it on the screen, and when you switch off the low power, it just disappears, and that's operating at high power. And your backlight button, probably won't be able to see it in this video, but just press it and maybe you can see it. And it stays on for a few seconds. So the first knob is your volume. Nobody's speaking right now. Second is your squelch. And then you have your channel selector. Let's see if anybody's on there. Guess it's a quiet day out. Now, of course, with the telescopic antenna, you're going to get a lot better range out of this than you will out of the rubber duck, obviously. And when you do plug in the mic speaker, it's a speaker and a mic, the sound will come from the microphone, and that's the push to talk. So that's about it on the realistic TRC-226. Now let's take a look at some of the features of the realistic TRC-216. And actually, this radio in particular, this walkie-talkie, appears to be one of Realistic's best, at least according to videos I've seen out there. It's very rugged and sounds good, transmits well, has lots of features on it, at least for the time that it came out. Looking at the front, we see it's a 40-channel walkie-talkie. There's your microphone. There's your speaker, and there's your display screen. On the display screen you'll get the RF output and also the channel and battery indicator as well. It'll let you know if you have a low battery. Now let's take a look at the side. We have a light for the display, and there's your push to talk button. Press the light, switch, and there you go, it comes on. Now let's take a look at the other side. First you have your high and low power. Of course, on CB radios you're allowed to have 4 watts output and 5 watts input. Usually the low power is around 1 watt to 1.5 watts. Here's a jack for an external antenna. To use an external antenna, you'll need one of these adapters for your coax cable. This goes in like this. Looks like an RCA adapter actually. And there you have it, and you screw in your coax. And this is for charging, this input here, and this is for your direct power. Now for charging and power, you can use the accessories that I showed you on the last segment, which was on the 226. You can plug in your car charger or run power from your home wall socket. Now let's take a look at the top of the radio. You have a 1/8 inch jack here for an external speaker, and then you have a jack here for an external microphone. It's a 5-pin Radio Shack jack. I don't have one currently, but I plan on getting one. I saw one on eBay. Here you have your channel selector. Here you have your squelch. And here's your on-off knob. Last but not least, let's look at the antenna. This is a center-loaded telescopic antenna. I don't know exactly how long it is, but it is pretty big. As you can hear, when I extended the antenna, the reception became much louder. Anyway, there you have it, the realistic TRC-216. Now let's take a look at the TRC-99C radios. I have two of them. I put one of them in its case so you can see what that looks like. And we'll set that aside. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the front of the radio. Bottom we have the speaker, battery gauge. It's 3 watts, 3 channels. Here are the 3 channels A, B, and C. And here's the speaker. Taking a look at the side. Just one button on this side, push to talk, and here I've marked the frequencies or the channels that I have loaded into the radio with crystals. Channel 9, channel 11, and channel 14. Taking a look at the other side, a lot of the same items we had on the previous radios. I don't have the extension speaker and mic. I don't believe the extension speaker and mic from the 226 is going to fit this one, but it does look like you could fit in an earpiece with this jack and a microphone with this jack, but it probably, I'm guessing, came in a single jack with 2 extensions on it. Here you have for the charger, so you can charge the batteries when they're in the radio. And here's your power jack and your antenna jack for using an external antenna. And again, it looks like an RCA jack like the other radios we looked at. Now let's take a look at the top. This knob is your on and off and volume. Squelch control, and here's your antenna. Of course, it's telescopic, and this one is not center loaded. Looking at the back side of the radio, this is where the battery compartment is. First of all, grab a penny. You can unscrew the back. Here you can see there are the crystals, and it holds either 10 rechargeable AA's or 8 alkaline batteries with 2 dummies. Right now I have it loaded with just 10 alkaline batteries. You line it up and screw it back in. And there you have the realistic TRC-99C. Now, if you wanted an upgrade from the TRC-99C, you'd want to go with this radio here. It's the TRC-100B. First of all, here's the carrying case for it. Came with that. Put that aside. Let's take a look at the front of the radio. First, you'll notice right off the bat it's similar to the TRC-99C. You got your microphone here, your battery power, your channel selector has 5 channels, and here's your speaker. Also, it is 5 channels and 5 watts. Again, that's 5 watts of receive and 4 watts of output. Let's take a look at the side. Not too much on this side, just your push the talk button. I marked in the channels that I have loaded into the radio. Take a look at the other side. You have a jack for your speaker, extension speaker, microphone jack. I believe this is 2.5 millimeter jack, and this is a 3.5 millimeter jack. This is for your charge, so you can charge your rechargeable batteries while they're in the radio. Here you have your power. And here again it looks like an RCA extension for an external antenna. Let's take a look at the back. This is where the battery compartment is. Again, you need a coin to unscrew the battery compartment. So first you can see here are the crystals for your 5 channels. Of course you have 2 crystals for each channel, 1 transmit, 1 receive. Here's our battery compartment. Holds 10 AA batteries. Of course, if you're using the rechargeables, it's usually 10 rechargeables or 8 alkaline with 2 dummies. Let's go ahead and put that back on. Now let's take a look at the top. First you have your on and off and volume knob. Over here you have your squelch knob. And then the antenna is a 10 section 53 inch center loaded antenna. Let's go ahead and turn it on. And there you have the realistic TRC-100B. Last but not least, we're looking at the realistic TRC-101. I believe it's the top of the line 23 channel walkie-talkie that Realistic made. It came out in the early 70s. First we have the carrying case that it came with. Put that aside. Let's look at the front of the radio. the bottom we have the microphone, the channel selector. Now you have 23 channels on the selector, plus it has this blank area here. I believe that's to check the battery. So here you have your meter for checking your battery and also your RF power. Here we have a switch for fine-tuning your frequency, as a plus, a minus, and again it's 5 watts advertised, and that's 4 watts output and 5 watts receive. Here's your speaker. Let's take a look at the side. Not much on this side again, just your push to talk. Take a look at the other side. Here you have an input for your extension antenna. Again, that's a RCA connector, I believe. And here you have an input for your power and an input to charge your rechargeable batteries while they're in the radio. Again, this is for your socket power. You can either use that in the power connector or the recharge connector. And again, you can use your adapter for use in the car with your 12-volt adapter. Take a look at the back. Nothing much on the back. Has a nice strap here for going behind your hand as you're carrying it. Okay, let's take a look at the top of the radio. Here you have your squelch knob. And here's your on and off and volume knob. Headphone jack and microphone jack. Again, like the last radio, I believe this is probably a 3.5 millimeter jack and this is a 2.5 millimeter jack. Now taking a look at the antenna. The antenna is obviously center loaded. It's 10 sections and about 53 inches. Let's go ahead and look at the battery compartment. Again, I'm going to grab a coin and unscrew the bolt. And it slides out. And this radio holds 12 AA batteries. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's going to be 12 rechargeable and 10 alkaline with 2 dummies, like most of the walkie-talkies I've looked at. It goes right back in like this. Now this is a rather large radio, appears to weigh over 4 pounds, and just to give you an idea of size, Let's measure it. So this radio is about 10¼ inches tall. Looks like about 3⅓ inches wide. And about 2⅓ inches deep. So there you have the realistic TRC-101. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a power test on the walkie-talkies. I'm going to plug them into my base station antenna, which is a Francis Maser right here. Okay, this is my home base station, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the antenna and go ahead and test out the power of these walkie-talkies. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and check the power output of my realistic TRC-226. I have it hooked up to the base station antenna with an adapter going through the Midland model number 23-500 SWR and power meter. So we're set on channel 20. Let's go ahead and try the low power first. So the low power came up there. Okay, low power seems like 1 watt, which is what they said. There you go, 1 watt of power. Let's try it on high power. Key it up. Okay, that's about what they said too. They said, the manual said 3.5 watts on high power. It looks like on the meter just a hair under 4 watts. Now let's go ahead and check the next radio. Now we're going to test the realistic TRC-216. Let's test it on low power first. And we key up, and we're getting 2 watts of power. Let's move to high power. Key up. Right on 4 watts, right what it should be. 4 watts of power. Now I wanted to show you also I did get a external microphone for this walkie-talkie. Appears to work pretty good. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2. Let's test out the realistic TRC-99C and see what it will put out for power. Okay, this one is not doing as well. It's supposed to put out 3 watts. Looks like we're getting about 1.5 out of it right now. But I guess the most important thing is to see how it does in the field though, and we'll be doing a range test later on in the video. So it may not be putting out a lot of watts here, but we'll see how it does outside transmitting. You know, I actually have 2 of these realistic TRC-99Cs, and this is radio number 1, and I wanted to see how it compared to the other radios, so let's go ahead and check it. Just about 2 watts. Just seeing if changing the channel makes any difference, and doesn't. Yes, so this one appears to be putting out a little bit more power, closer to 2 watts. Now let's check the power on the realistic TRC-100B. This one is supposed to be 5 watts. Of course, 4 watts of output. Let's see what it does. Looks like just a hair over 2 watts. So these radios are over 45 years old, so not too bad. Again, we'll test it in the field and see how it does. Finally, let's check the power on the realistic TRC-101. Go ahead and key it up. Almost 4 watts. About what it should be putting out. So at the beginning of the video, I did a short range test to make sure all the radios received well, and they did. And before I take them out on the road and test a little over a mile away, I wanted to make sure that the audio was good and do a short range test from my backyard. So this is going to be about 100 feet away through the walls of the house, and just make sure the audio sounds good and everything's functioning right. So we'll go ahead and test the radios now. We'll turn on the President. And we'll go ahead and see how they transmit. First, we're testing out the TRC-226. Radio check, radio check. 1, 2, 3, radio check. Realistic, TRC-226. Radio check. Audio, audio, radio check. Radio check, radio check. 1, 2, 3, radio check. Realistic, TRC-226. Radio check. Audio, audio, radio check. Radio check, radio check. On the TRC-216. Realistic TRC-216. Radio check. 1, 2, 3. Audio, audio. Radio check, radio check. On the TRC-216, realistic TRC-216, radio check, 1, 2, 3, audio, audio. Radio check, radio check. Testing the realistic TRC-99C, radio check, audio, audio, radio check. Radio check, radio check. Testing the realistic TRC-99C, radio check, audio, audio, radio check. Radio check, radio check. This is the realistic TRC-100B. Radio check. 1, 2, 3. Audio. Audio. Radio check. Radio check. This is the realistic TRC-101. Radio check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Audio. Audio. Radio check. Radio check, radio check. This is the realistic TRC-101. Radio check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Audio. Audio. Radio check. This is the realistic TRC-226. Radio check from 1.2 miles away. Radio check, radio check. Audio, audio, audio. Radio check, radio check. This is the realistic 216 from 1.2 miles away. Radio check, radio check. Audio, audio, radio check. Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-99C from 1.2 miles away. Audio, 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 radio check. Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-99C from 1.2 miles away. Audio, 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 radio check.
You are being recorded.
Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-100B from 1.2 miles away. Radio check. Audio, audio, audio.
You are being recorded.
Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-100B from 1.2 miles away. Radio check. Audio, audio, audio.
You are live.
Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-101 from 1.2 miles away. Audio, audio, radio check. Okay, Christian, you can pause the recording. I'm going to do a couple of bonus rounds now with something. Just hang on with me.
I turned off the recording.
You are live.
Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-101 from 1.2 miles away. Audio, audio, radio check. Okay, Christian, you can pause the recording. I'm going to do a couple of bonus rounds now with something. Just hang on with me. Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-226 from 1.2 miles away using an external mic. Radio check. Audio, audio, audio. Did that come through, Christian?
Yes, it sounds very clear.
Outstanding. One more to go. Stand by.
All right.
Radio check, radio check. This is the TRC-226 from 1.2 miles away using an external mic. Radio check. Audio, audio, audio. Did that come through, Christian?
Yes, it sounds very clear.
Outstanding. One more to go. Stand by.
All right.
Radio check, radio check. This is the President Randy 2 FCC from 1.2 miles away. Radio check, radio check. Audio, audio.
You sound as clear as ever.
Okay, this has concluded the radio check for today. This is Music Man 364 signing off.
Copy that. Radio check, radio check. This is the President Randy 2 FCC from 1.2 miles away. Radio check, radio check. Audio, audio.
You sound as clear as ever.
Okay, this has concluded the radio check for today. This is Music Man 364 signing off.
Copy that.
Now I'm going to summarize what we've seen from some of these walkie-talkies. But first I wanted to say that this is just a home movie, nothing more. I'm not monetized and I'm not doing this for a living. I wouldn't consider myself a content creator, and I'm not doing this for clicks, high fives, handshakes, subscriptions, or anything like that. This is just a labor of love. Also, I am obviously not a radio technician. That being said, I do appreciate your comments about these walkie-talkies or anything CB related. As far as the production of the video goes, it is what it is. If you take a look at the opening of the video, you'll see numerous other working walkie-talkies that I have. If you would like to see a similar video on one of those walkie-talkies, please let me know in the comments. Now, some of my walkie-talkies need servicing and repairs, so if you can recommend a honest professional to work on them, please let me know in the comments. Finally, I'm going to put some links in the description of my favorite YouTube channels that inspired me to do this video. Now let's just take a quick summary of what we saw from each radio. Okay, let's start with the TRC-226. We saw on the power test it put out 1 watt on low power and 3.5 to 4 watts on high power. On the range test at 1.2 miles, on the internal mic, we transmitted on channel 23 and we got 2 to 5 bars. It was very audible. Lots of DX and interference on the channel though. On the external mic, we received 2 to 3 out of 5 bars, and it was very, very good audio. Okay, looking at the realistic TRC-216, on the power test we saw 2 watts on low, and on high power we saw 4 watts. For the range test, again 1.2 miles, with the internal mic we transmitted on channel 23, and I got 2 out of 5 bars on the radio, and the audio was very marginal and distorted. With the external mic, I tried later on channel 14. I got 2 out of 5 bars, and again the audio was pretty poor and distorted. Again, they were noisy channels that day, you could tell. And I did realize I had a broken antenna on this, and I do have a replacement I'm going to put on, so I might check this again someday. But the antenna, when I pulled it out, it came right out. So I don't know if this was the problem, but I am going to put a new antenna on it and try it again someday. Now we're going to take a look at the realistic TRC-99C. Again, it's a 3 watt radio. This is radio 2 of 2 that I have. On the power test we did 1.5 watts and transmitting from 1.2 miles, and I only have an internal mic for this one obviously. We transmitted on channel 14. I got 2 out of 5 bars, very audible. The voice volume appeared a little bit lower. Again, there was lots of DX and background interference. But I did notice this one has a very poor receive, so that's something I need to get looked at or checked out. And I just wanted to add again, if you'll notice these inputs for a external mic, I cannot find an external mic anywhere, not even in the Radio Shack catalogs. I don't even know what it looks like. So if you have any recommendations for an external mic for this radio, I'd appreciate it in the comments. Now we're looking at the realistic TRC-100B. On the power test, it seemed like it put out about 2 watts, maybe a little bit more. On the range test, 1.2 miles with its internal mic, I got 2 to 5 bars. It was fairly audible, and there was still lots of background noise. And again, like the 99C, if you have information about an external mic for this, I'd love to hear from you. Now looking at the TRC-101, put out 4 watts on the power meter, which was great. For the range test with the internal mic on channel 14, I got 2 out of 5 bars. Very good audio, but I was getting some bleed over from another channel. The only thing I got to fix on this one is the battery pack, and I think I can do that. Finally, the video obviously is not on this President Randy 2 FCC, but I did a quick range test while I was out there, and from 1.2 miles it did very well. We were on channel 14 and I got 2 out of 5 bars, and the audio was very good. Probably the best performing radios today were the TRC-226 and this one here, the President Randy 2.